What's up? I am not that FF nerd. I am at nonsense underscore Steve, filling in for the nerd who's traveling, but joined as always by Mr. Mike Burland. Mike, how you doing today?
Pretty good. A lot to talk about. It's a tough one for Jason to miss. A lot of injuries, and
I
yeah,
know,
this is
right?
one of those weeks where you think you know something about football, and then all these games, PJ
Right.
Walker beats the 49ers, and Tyrod
hmm
Taylor almost beats the Bills, and it's like,
Yep.
yeah, maybe I don't really know as much as I think.
Yeah.
So
I think what we've learned too is like we're in that stretch where you've got the Eagles, you've got the Bills. I would also kind of like now that Burrow's a little bit healthy, I'd kind of put the Bengals in that the category as well. But teams that have like consistently been good the last couple of seasons that just don't care about the
yep.
regular season at all, and
Mhm.
they completely phone it in. And then you've got the Bills who can just flip the switch, and it's like, oh, the Dolphins are a good team. Let me try this week, and they put
Yeah.
up monster numbers, and then they come back against the Giants, don't care at all, and almost accidentally lose a game. So I think it says less about them and more about just their mindset of how much these regular season games matter to them.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So, but yeah, lots of unfortunate injuries, and
Yeah, I
the
mean,
big bye
so
week.
this week we've got the Bengals, the Cowboys, the Jets, the Panthers, the Texans, and the Titans all going on the bye. Plus, you have guys like Justin Fields getting hurt is going to miss this week. David Montgomery getting hurt with the hand injury is going to miss this week. It looks like Trevor Lawrence is going to play, but he's dealing with an injury in his day to day right
Mhm.
now. So there's a lot happening. A lot of teams are going to be beat up heading into week 7, so your depth is about to get tested here in the thick of the fantasy season. So I've got the nerds first. His ad at quarterbacks here is Derek Carr, 14.9% rostered, going up against that Jacksonville team that I just mentioned with Trevor Lawrence banged up. Has only held one quarterback under 200 passing yards, and it was Desmond Ritter, and one touchdown. Since the return of Kamara, Carr's hitting double digits, and this is his first quote unquote easy defensive matchup. Week 5 against New England, 15.72 points, and week 6 against Houston, 16.42. So, been fairly consistent. He was also dealing with injuries himself at the beginning of the year. So, the AC joint, and that always takes a couple weeks for you to kind of get right there. So, if you're looking for a streaming option, that's a pretty good one there too.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I threw out a few here just because of the heavy bye week. Luckily, it's not the worst. Like, we have the Panthers, the Titans, even the Jets, like a couple teams on there where there's not a whole lot of fantasy players you're missing. But did throw out a few quarterbacks. Sam Howell, he's quarterback 11 on the season, top 14 quarterback in all but 1 week this year. At least 18 fantasy points each of the last 3 weeks, and he plays the Giants in week 7. So I know they looked good against the Bills, but yeah, I just think Howell's a nice player that can get you points. I think their defense isn't very good, so could be a good game script for him as well. So he's probably maybe my top one on the list. Jordan Love is another one that was probably dropped because he had a bye week, and he didn't look great against the Raiders in week 6, but before that he was at least 19 points the first 4 weeks of the season. Week 5 against the Raiders, I think it was, not week 6,
Mhm.
but and yeah, he's coming off a bye and he plays the Broncos, which is maybe the
Yep.
juiciest matchup outside the Bears, maybe. But
Yeah,
so
they're
that,
right now the Broncos are number one most QB points given up.
yep.
So there you go.
So yeah, I like that one as well. And then Daniel Jones, he was probably dropped because of the injury. He's under that 50% threshold, and he wasn't playing very well too. So
Mhm.
he still runs the ball, third most rushing yards through the first 5 weeks. He's got Saquon back now. Wandale's kind of showing that he's going to maybe play a role on this team. You still have Waller, so if you get all those pieces together, he plays the Commanders, like I mentioned with Sam Howell. So just a few out there. I think there's a few options out there for us, including Derek Carr. So if you have someone on a bye, you should be okay this week.
And just me personally, I'm gonna throw out the same one that I've thrown out effectively every single week
Yep.
at this point, and it's Baker Mayfield, who he served his bye already, and he had a tough matchup against the Lions. We knew that was going to be a tough matchup for him. He only had 8 fantasy points. That's his worst performance of the season, but it was the first time all year he hasn't put up double digits. So other than that, he's been fairly consistent, and they're going up against Atlanta, who's been a mixed bag defensively. His mobility, I think, is going to cause problems for them. I don't love the matchup in week 8 against Buffalo, so this would be a 1 week band aid. But if you're one of those that has like a Joe Burrow, or you've been playing CJ Stroud because he's been hot, like if you're one of those that's dealing with a bye week specifically for week 7, Baker Mayfield is a guy I might be looking at.
Yeah, no, I like that. We have to start treating the Lions as a legit defense.
100%.
Like it's not this soft matchup. So yeah, I like that for sure.
All right, running backs. What do we got? Should talk about Damian Williams, 0%. Why am I talking about Damian Williams? Do you have any idea what he's talking about here?
I think you wanted to talk about the whole situation of Damian Williams versus Keontae Ingram versus Amari DeMarcado, just a mess, like a soup sandwich, like my dad says, like it's I want to avoid all that. It's a true 3-headed backfield.
I didn't want any of that to begin with. So I was good with Connor because he was getting basically 100% of the job. I didn't want any of the fill-ins there. So I think you were good. There was a reason you didn't handcuff him. I'll put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah. So him being hurt, I don't think affects anything there.
Yeah.
All right. So Craig Reynolds, 6.3% rostered. David Montgomery was hurt in the game. Gibbs has been dealing with the hamstring injury. I think that Gibbs has a shot to play this week, maybe, but David Montgomery, they were saying, is going to miss a couple of weeks. They don't know how long exactly, but it's some kind of cartilage issue. So he's going to be down for a little while. But again, anybody in that backfield for Detroit seems to be solid behind that offensive line, and with the way that they're moving the ball offensively in general. Having any piece of that offense isn't a bad thing. He can shoulder the workload. Week 5 against Carolina, 11.2 fantasy points, scored a touchdown. Week 6, Tampa, 6.3 fantasy points, with Montgomery getting hurt early in the game against a tough run defense and a nice matchup against the Ravens.
Yeah, my only concern with Reynolds is if Gibbs is back, and we saw this already this year. Montgomery missed week 3. And I kind of thought, okay, Craig Reynolds is going to step in and be that poor man's David Montgomery, and he played 29% of the snaps and had 4 carries. So if Gibbs is back, it's gonna be hard for me to start Reynolds. So that's where I'm but I do think they could give him more play this week.
If Gibbs is back, are you more confident starting Gibbs if you've been the Gibbs manager all season?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to at that point.
Right.
But I wish they would just use Craig Reynolds more like Montgomery and still just throw the ball to Gibbs a little bit more, rather than try to give Gibbs 18 carries. I just don't think that's what his skill set is. So, but yeah, it's just a little, I'd be a little nervous, but I think if Montgomery is going to miss multiple weeks, then I definitely think he's an ad for sure. I have a lot of names that I'll kind of try and quickly go through here. Obviously,
the guys that I'm most interested in, you've already got on your list, so I'll let you run through them here.
Yeah, I've been was just kind of writing them all down, so you can jump in whenever you want. But the Jeff Wilson, if he's still out there, this team wants to use multiple running backs. Like they've shown that they'll use 3 if they need to. So Achan's obviously going to miss time, so I think Jeff Wilson is close to coming back. Chuba Hubbard, we talked about it. Panthers are on a bye, so this one's a little tougher to pick up and hold through the bye. He obviously dominated the playing time with Sanders out. He scored 16 points. I think he's looked better than Sanders this year. But, to Sanders, was it just, we have a bye week, we'll sit Sanders, he'll be fine after the bye, and then, you don't want either one if they're going to be anywhere close to like a split at all, really.
Right.
So, I mean, that one, he probably deserves to be on rosters just because of what he did, and if Sanders is out long term. Roshan is probably the top of my list here. I should have started off with him, to be honest. He's still under that 50%. I think he was dropped because he was out with an injury, which makes sense. But he should be the starter. We don't know that for sure. They might just keep him in the same role and put Deontay Foreman give him a bunch of the early down work and all that. They still might do that, but Foreman didn't look great. He didn't look bad, but he didn't look amazing this last week. He looked fine, but I hope it's Roshan and they kind of give him the workload. I just think it'd be exciting to see, and they have the Chargers and the Raiders the next 2 weeks, so two really juicy matchups. So
Well, and
I,
Darrington Evans too. Like
mhm,
this is the problem with the Bears offense is Khalil Herbert was the starter
yeah,
for the beginning of this season, and he was okay. He was a flex at best when everybody was playing and healthy. So now
yeah,
that we're in a situation where you're in the buys, it would be more likely you would play somebody like a Khalil Herbert, and that's kind of the role that Johnson is going to step into. But I still think they're going to mix in everybody else. It's still going to be a three-headed monster. They'll even put Blasingame in there and be four heads for all
yeah,
we know. And it'll depend on game script as well. Are they chasing points? Are they going to pass it to the running backs? What are they going to do with the backup quarterback? How is that
yes.
going to affect it? Because there's no Fields. There's a lot up in the air right now with the Bears offense.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like we, didn't even mention, like you just said at the very end, this team could be rolling out like Nathan Peterman or Tyson, was it Bagent or Bagant?
Yeah, Bagant, I think.
Bagant.
Bagent.
So
I don't know. He's the
yeah,
rookie that took over the number 2 spot, and I think he's going to get the start.
yeah, and he looked good in preseason, but we've seen a lot of players look good in preseason that just look awful.
Yep.
DTR is one of them. Like,
Yep.
and they made a huge mistake. They should have been starting PJ Walker,
Yep.
and so that makes me a little worried. But I still like Roshan as a talent, and it's one of those where if he plays well and they do give him the role, he could just take over this backfield, and you could have a
Sure.
rest of the season starter. So um, obviously the CMC possible injury, Jordan Mason, Elijah Mitchell. I don't know. I'd like to get your thoughts on who's it going to be, because it was obviously Mason yesterday's game, but it was Elijah Mitchell coming back from a knee injury. So I don't know if that was just kind of, we're not going to give you many carries no matter
Hmm.
what type of thing. And that was kind of the plan. And because Elijah Mitchell was the backup before he had the knee injury a couple weeks ago. So I
Yeah.
don't know which way you lean here. I do think Mason looks good though.
So for me, this goes back to the Arizona situation. There's only one CMC, and with him out, it's probably going to be a car wash.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot of guys rotating in and out, and like it could be a. I mean, you could, if he's healthy, you could see Debo get carries
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
end up cutting it, doing what he was doing before CMC got there. So it's anybody's guess. I honestly don't trust any individual 49ers running back that isn't Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. No, I generally agree with that, but it is tough to pass up on, like, this team, this
Sure.
offense, and their running back. So
Yeah,
I
the
don't know.
idea of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But my only fear is like you're going to go all in on Mason and spend a lot of fab, and then it's just Elijah Mitchell, or
Right.
vice versa. So I do
So
think Mason looks pretty good though.
the other issue is like for um for this week specifically, if it's a longer term thing for McCaffrey, which I don't think it is, I think it's maybe 1 or 2 weeks that he'll
Yeah.
miss. Um, but just for this week specifically, like that Vikings defense has been terrible against the pass. They've been rough against tight ends, rough against wide receivers, but they have stopped the run. It's the one thing that they've been able to do effectively this year is not give up a lot of fantasy points on the ground. So I think the 49ers can just pummel them to death in the air. And if you're going to play any of these guys, you're just hoping that they're winning by 30 in the second half and they're running out the clock with somebody.
Hmm.
That's your biggest hope.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. So, um, Zach Evans is another one that's on no one's roster for the Rams, rookie running back for the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Ronnie Rivers is going to miss time, I think a PCL strain or something.
Yep.
And Kyron Williams, they already said basically it's kind of nice. They've already, I think a couple players here, they've already come out and said he's not playing.
Yeah.
Montgomery, one of them. It's like, okay, thank you. Like Monday, thank you for telling us on Monday. But yeah,
Appreciate the
Kyron's going to
heads
be
up.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Kyron's out. Zach Evans, like, and is it Royce Freeman that's on their practice squad as well? I think
Sounds
I,
right.
yeah, Zach Evans is intriguing just because a little background on him. He's a rookie. He was like a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and he had all this talent, but it just for whatever reason it hasn't been put together on the field and hasn't shown production on the field, like major production. So can the Rams be the team that kind of get him going? It's always intriguing with a rookie. So he might be interesting because he might be a couple week play on a pretty good
Hmm.
offense that
Yeah,
obviously
Royce
will
Royce
feed.
Freeman is on their practice squad. You are correct.
Okay. Yeah. But I'd prioritize Zach Evans. So,
Hmm.
especially on a team that's shown they'll feed their running back. So I really like that play over for the next couple weeks. Man, it keeps
Well,
going. Latavius. Yeah,
even
go ahead.
against Pittsburgh and Dallas,
Uh, that's tough.
see, that's
That's
the
tough.
thing. It's like
Yeah.
it's a rookie. Yes, he's going to get the workload, but uh, he's really got to be special, right? To beat
Mhm.
those two front lines.
Yeah. No, that's true for sure. I mean,
I mean, but if you're desperate, I
mhm.
can't blame you.
Yeah, it still could be a situation where the game's close.
Yeah.
They run the ball, and maybe Dallas or Pittsburgh they don't focus on stopping the run for those against the Rams. I don't know.
Yeah.
That is a hesitation for sure. But Latavius Murray, this is more for deeper leagues. Like Damian Harris should miss time. I know they said he was released from the hospital and stuff, which is great. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It's basically like it was Latavius Murray and Damian Harris splitting the snaps that James Cook wasn't getting. So you could get 12, 15 carries from Murray, and goal line stuff. So this is kind of more of a desperation thing. Kareem Hunt's interesting. 16.1 points in week 6.
Mhm.
He's been slowly getting more playing time,
Yeah, this was
20%,
mine. I
22%.
was really curious how much his playing time would increase coming out of the
Mm-hmm.
bye because we
Yep.
knew he had to get his feet underneath him. He had no training camp, he had no preseason, so he was going to have to get acclimated, even though he knows the offense already.
Mm-hmm.
But once he got his legs underneath him, would they continue to just give it to Jerome Ford,
Yeah.
or would they get Hunt more involved in the offense? And this week specifically, he got more involved. Now, we don't know if that's because they came out of the bye or if that's because of PJ Walker starting instead of Deshaun Watson. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. We'll find out this week, perhaps.
Yeah. No, I definitely think he should be added though, because
Yes.
again, almost a 40% snap share. Like, what if it gets to 50-50? What if they just run? They
Yeah.
basically roll out like Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt
Right.
from the years past, and
Yeah. For me, I
maybe
was wanting to hold on to him before this because I
yeah.
was waiting for him to pop and then it would be expensive. So now I
Mhm.
think this may be still under the radar enough that you could get him relatively cheap compared to everything else. But
Mhm.
yeah, this is definitely one that I would be interested in.
Yeah. And just a few more here. Jaleel McLaughlin, still think he's a good player. I don't think I think there's an outside chance that, the Broncos have a little bit of a fire sale up through the
Hmm.
trade deadline. And what if they trade Javante to someone? And, what if it's Jaleel McLaughlin that he's the benefactor of it. So I think, he's interesting to maybe hold on for another week or two if you can. Justice Hill is just one of those like you're getting a running back that's getting touches, but I'm not excited about Ravens running backs. Just not, unfortunately. And yeah, we talked about these handcuffs, the high end handcuffs. Tajay Spears, Zach Charbonnet, and Rico Dowdo, I would add to that list, the backup for Tony Pollard. If any of those guys get hurt, these guys are by far the top priority. So if you can hold on to them, I would.
What about Zeke?
Yeah, he's another interesting one. I mean, Ramondre came back. I don't know. It's going to be tough for me to want to start the number 2 running back on the Patriots offense. Like
Hmm.
it's really really tough. So
Yeah, just
I
because they're
definitely
so bad in general, right?
yeah. It
Which
should add. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. Especially because you've got Buffalo and Miami as their
Hmm.
next two games.
Hmm.
But then, for me, Zeke is a long term play. Just thinking down the line, because after these next two matchups, which should be tough, you've got Washington and Indy before their bye.
Hmm.
So if something were to happen to Stevenson, who's been banged up and dealing with injuries himself, if he were to go down, Zeke becomes the lead back. All of a sudden, you've got two juicy matchups against Washington and the Colts. and you could play him in weeks 9 and 10 if you've got bye weeks at that point and feel pretty good about it. And you can get him for free now if you have the roster space for it. And he's 40% rostered right now.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, he should probably be into that
Yeah.
Tajay
So
Spears
it's less
Charbonnet
for
role.
this week, more for long term. And then, yeah,
Mhm.
same thing. Tajay Spears this week on the bye. Absolutely. If someone cuts him because it's the bye week, I am nabbing that. I
Yeah,
still am not convinced that we make it to Halloween at the trade deadline and Derrick Henry is a Titan.
yeah. Especially if Tannehill's hurt,
Mm-hmm.
long term. Yeah, no, I agree. And he kind of has some standalone value. Like, um, even if Henry
Even with
even as
Henry
the best,
still there, yeah.
yeah, and like he was I think a top 30 running back, which is nothing to write home about. He's RB 30 without even hardly getting any touches. So yeah,
Right.
I think he's really good player. So lots of running backs to choose from for sure.
All right. Wide receivers. Curtis Samuel. I've got Curtis Samuel. See, Curtis Samuel is one of those guys I feel like I have in basically every deep league that I'm in,
Hmm.
proudly sitting on my bench while he scores touchdowns.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I'm never in a situation where I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start Curtis Samuel this week for
yep.
sure. So maybe this is the time now with all the injuries that he actually finds his way into my starting lineup. But he's become the clear cut wide receiver two in Washington, as sad as that is for Jahan Dotson.
Yeah.
The last 3 weeks, he's been on a tear. Week 4 against Philadelphia, 18.2. Week 5 against Chicago, 18.5. And week 6 against Atlanta, 14.2. The touchdowns obviously help that. But still, if they're going to utilize him basically over the middle like a tight end, he's going to give you that tight end esque production. So I can see why the nerd has him here on that list.
Yeah, I agree with you though. It's so hard. Those type of guys, it's just like you never start them, and then when you do, they're gonna
They're great
bust.
for bye week fill-ins
Yeah.
because they're going to give you consistent points. They're not going to give you home runs, but you
Mhm.
feel comfortable getting something as opposed to not being able to play anybody.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. So, yeah, a couple other ones that he put up there. Wandale Robinson, I think, is a good target there. What do you have? Eight catches on 8 targets yesterday's game. So they need something, some kind of production, and he could just be that nice PPR target for sure. Jonathan Mingo, he put. I'm not really interested in Jonathan Mingo. I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
just it's Thielen and no one else really on that team or receiving core. Josh Downs is a good one. He's
Yep.
still at that 30% or so. He's had double digit points each of the last 2 weeks. 8 targets this week. Alec Pierce got hurt, which I don't know if it's really going to affect his playing time at all, but something
Right.
to look at. But yeah, this passing game, these receivers are going to benefit from Gardner Minshew potentially the rest of the season. So I think Josh Downs is maybe my top target, unless one of the Chargers guys, and you can go and check right now if they're on the waiver wire, and you can squeeze them in before this game starts
Right.
Monday night. They were still under that 50% threshold. I would throw both of them, like either one of them, if they're both out there. Like I would maybe go Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston. If one of them's out there, and you can put them on your bench right now, I would.
Yeah.
But and obviously when the waivers run on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, yeah, not so exciting with the wide receivers. A few guys like Marvin Mims is another one I'm definitely storing on my bench because again, the Broncos we talked about rumors of Jerry Jeudy being shipped out, Cortland Sutton being shipped out. Well, there goes. If Marvin Mims is the top receiver on this team, I'm excited about that. So he's one of those put on your bench now if he's out there,
Yeah.
because yeah, the trade deadline could really change his value a lot. And then yeah, like Rashee Rice is still the Kansas City receiver I want if you can hold that. Jaden Reed, interesting rookie, but tough. He could be the third, fourth target on that team. Jameson Williams, if he's still out there, he had a big play.
Yep.
Who knows if they get him more involved in. Jalen Hyatt is one I just added very late to this list. He had, I think, over 70% of the snap share. And again, on a team, he's a rookie. He has a lot of speed. I don't know if he's going to be a big volume play guy, but He's just on a team that needs something. So interesting to see that he had a huge increase in terms of his snap share from up to 73%. So I like to see that for a rookie.
Let's see. Do you have what about as we get into these bye weeks? So mentioned Curtis Samuel already. What about somebody like Rashid Shaheed as a
Yeah,
boomer bust play? Because he's going to get 2 or 3 catches at
mhm,
most every single game, but the
mhm.
hope is that one of them is for a 60-yard touchdown.
Yeah, I like that. Especially like you said during these bye weeks, where you're desperate for points, or
Yeah.
like, oh, this could be the deciding factor in your week. When did Carr get hurt? Was it week 2 slash
2, I
like,
believe, against
so week 3
Carolina.
was like the first game where he so obviously like Carr could not throw the ball further than Kamara. He threw it to
Yeah.
Kamara 13 times or whatever,
Yeah.
or more. So, if you kind of erase like weeks 3 and 4, yeah, Shaheed's had actually a really good season.
Yeah. Yeah, if you
3.
look at his PPR finishes right now, because right now he's wide receiver 10 going into Monday Night Football.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 finishes in 6 games. He's got 2 finishes inside the top 12 and 4 finishes outside of the top 50.
Wow.
So that's the ultimate definition of boom or bust.
Yeah.
All or nothing. So
And
there you go. You're hoping for that home run.
yeah, and again, if like you weeks 3 and 4, we say that shoulder injury was really affecting Carr,
Mhm.
like it could have been he could be more consistent than we're kind of giving credit for if that shoulder injury. So yeah, I like that call for sure. Like if what do you have? I'm trying to look at what he had last. I know he had a big catch, but if he gets a 60-yard touchdown, that could be the
Yeah, he
deciding
had 2
factor.
catches for 85 yards yesterday.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, and the
Yeah, I like
touchdown,
that.
which I believe was a 65-yard touchdown. So I think he had a 20-yard catch and a 65-yard touchdown. That's probably something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely a good call. What about Zay Jones? Are you interested in Zay? He's basically missed. He's only played 1 week,
He
but
has missed a lot of time. I've actually been enjoying him missing a lot of time
yeah.
because as in one league I've got Christian Kirk and Zay Jones, and every
Mhm.
week whichever one I pick is the wrong one. The other one has the 20-point performance, and the one in my starting lineup has the 0. So it's been pretty easy to pick out which one is the right one when Zay Jones isn't playing.
Mhm.
But otherwise, yeah, I think when he comes back, he certainly has value. I think it just hurts Kirk, and it's the
Mhm.
same deal. You're going to get a great week from him or nothing.
Mhm.
There's really no consistency in it.
Yeah.
But I don't mind rostering it. If you think Christian Kirk is worth rostering, then I'm fine rostering Zay Jones too because it's the exact same thing.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Another one that just popped up in terms of like who can gain value from the trade. Like, what if the Cardinals trade Marquise Brown? I think Michael Wilson becomes pretty intriguing. Even Rondale
Yeah,
Moore, I don't know, but Michael Wilson, I think, becomes really intriguing if they trade Marquise Brown, which I don't think. I haven't heard any rumors, but I don't think that's crazy to say. Like, why
yeah,
wouldn't the Cardinals think about trading him? So
yeah. And then I will put one just because I don't think we mentioned it at all, and I'll double check my numbers here just to be certain on ESPN because I'm looking at the yeah. So I mean 49.4%. So it's a little cheating. It's right at that ceiling. Okay, but Tyler Boyd. I am a known Tyler Boyd hater. I am not a Tyler Boyd enthusiast by any stretch of the imagination. But outside of a very terrible performance in week 1, he's gotten at least 7 targets in every single game this season. They're on the bye this week, so he should be very easy to come by.
mhm.
And we've already seen it. If something happens to Higgins or something happens to Chase, he suddenly becomes more involved in the offense. And if he falls into the end zone because of his consistency and because of how he's used in that offense, in the bye weeks especially, he can be very valuable for you. So there's a non-zero chance that that 49.4 actually goes down because of the bye week. Like, oh, I need a roster spot to fill in for someone this week. I'll cut
Mhm.
Tyler Boyd because it doesn't matter. But yeah, if I've got the space, again, like Zeke, long term play, maybe I'm looking ahead to, I know I've got the bipocalypse coming up in week 10 or whenever it is for my roster.
Mhm.
I can look ahead and grab Tyler Boyd and feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I don't hate that because also he had it was week 5 against the Cardinals. He had a touchdown, a good touchdown that was called back on a penalty that didn't even affect the play.
Hmm.
So you add that like to it, he looks a lot more exciting. And yeah, they're not getting anything from their tight ends. Like normally in the past years, they would at least get Hayden Hurst, Uzama getting 40, 50 catches or whatever they
Right.
had. They're getting nothing, and so that seems to be benefiting Tyler Boyd a bit. To where, yeah, like you said, 7, 8 targets basically outside of week 1, and T. Higgins has only been hurt what 1 game. He only missed 1 game, so it's not like he missed all those games.
Right.
So
Yeah. But he's
yeah,
been
I like
banged
that.
up, but he's only missed fully the one game, I think. Yeah. All right. Tight ends. The nerd has Jonnu Smith and Logan Thomas on here. I love me some Jonnu Smith always, but I think it's Kyle Pitts' season finally.
Mhm.
I think they're actually utilizing him the way that they need to going forward, hopefully. But I really think there's really only room for one tight end in that offense to do anything. For whatever reason, it wasn't Kyle Pitts at the beginning of the year, and now it seems to be. So I don't know if I'm going to go out of my way to pick up Janu unless I'm
Mhm.
like extremely desperate and there's nothing else on the out there on the tight end market.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I know Johnny's been producing, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's hard for me to the
He's been
second tight end on
he's been
any
a top
team.
12 tight end each of the last
Yeah,
3 weeks, and right now he's tight end 4. I
yeah,
get it,
I
but
know.
he was 4 for 36 and he fell in the end zone. That's all you have to do to be a top 10
Yeah.
tight end is fall in the end zone. So if you take the touchdown away, 4 for 36 on 5 targets. They've got Tampa, Tennessee, Minnesota, and Arizona. It's a fantastic stretch
Mhm.
coming up, but you're really just hoping he falls in the end zone. It's a desperation play.
Yeah, yeah.
The nerd also has Trey McBride on here, who's 0.4% owned right now. Uh, the tight end one for the Cardinals, perhaps. Outsnapped and out targeted Zach Ertz this week, second in yards on the team. You mentioned if they move Hollywood Brown at the trade deadline. This is, in addition to Wilson, this is another guy who would certainly benefit from that. Against the 49ers, only 1.5 fantasy points. Against the Bengals, only 3.7. And then this week against the Rams, 10.2. So certainly ramping up. I can understand why. I mean, there was the hype in the preseason. We talked about it in the
Mhm.
32 and 32. But for me, again, this is another deep dive desperation play. If you're looking for just a streamer or a bye week fill in, I think there's better options out there.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's not like it's we don't have a huge tight end week. Titans, Jets, Panthers, Bengals. So on by not a huge one. So hopefully you don't have to go that far. But another guy that's potentially coming on, Michael Mayer for the rookie tight end for the
Mm-hmm.
Raiders, could be coming on. He saw a season high of 81% of the snaps. They could finally be moving on from Austin Hooper. And he looked good. 6 targets, 5 catches, 75 yards, like just kind of bullying his way down the field. Devontae Adams, is he more injured than we know? And could this open up? This team needs kind of a third option, anyways, on the team. And I think Michael Mayer could easily be that. Josh
Yep.
McDaniels coming from the Patriots offense, Rob Gronkowski. You can see the potential of a tight end and like a guy like his size who's supposed to be coming in was a really good blocker as well. So I could
Yeah.
get him easily on the field. So um, I'm definitely interested to see that continue if that's going to continue the usage for him because we've seen a couple rookie tight ends already this year. So
Mm-hmm. And then Neil and I were doing a roster resolution.
mhm.
We were talking about Luke Musgrave,
Yeah,
who is on the bye this week. So maybe not a lot of people are, remembering or noting what's going on there. First 2 games of the season, he was really getting acclimated to the offense, But then week 3 against New Orleans, he caught 6 passes on 8 targets for 49 yards, was a top 10 finish at tight end without falling in the end zone. Week 4, Thursday Night Football against Detroit, gets a concussion in the first quarter, misses basically the entire game, and then comes back against Vegas last week before their bye and has 7 targets, 6 catches for 34 yards, top 15 performance again. He has a solidified, carved out role in that offense over the middle. He's a consistent guy that's going to put up numbers. He's going to be a back end, tight end 1 on a weekly basis. Plus, coming into the buys, that's going to be back end tight end or top 10 tight end until we get to maybe like week 12 ish. And if he falls in the end zone, you're talking about a top 5 guy. So right now you can have him for free, and not a lot of people might be paying attention to that.
Yeah, and I think he's like 7th in yards per route run.
Something like that.
Yeah, or receptions per route run. I forget what it is, but he's up there with.
Yeah, in efficiency metrics, he's
yeah, right behind a bunch of other guys that are doing well. So yeah, I like that call for sure.
Defensively, the Rams match up against the Steelers. The only reason I don't super love it is the Steelers are coming off their bye. So they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, which with Mike Tomlin typically means that they come out with a lot of crazy, weird stuff happening that we haven't seen yet in the season. But their offense has looked atrocious so far, and they should be getting Deontay Johnson back, which will help. But I can understand why, you would want the Rams defense here in this situation if you were desperate.
Yeah. I put down the Browns as my top. Like, I think
that feels like a dunk, right?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy.
Yeah, we were talking about it last week, and I kind of mentioned it. Like, maybe we should just pick them up coming off the bye. And we were like, oh, they play San Francisco. We were worried, and we saw how that played out. They're just a good defense. Like, this is, you pick them up, and they're already had their bye. You probably don't have to worry about a defense the rest of the year. So they get the Colts, Seahawks, Cardinals. They get the Steelers. They get the Broncos. They have a pretty good schedule. They get the Texans. They get the Bears, Jets. So they have a
I mean, this is stacked. So you pick them up, set it, and forget it.
Yeah, for sure. And which is what you're really looking for the most. If they're already rostered, Packers maybe just because they play the Broncos. They've been kind of consistent, solid defense, nothing lower than 3 points. So, just because of the matchup. Same with the Seahawks, pretty good matchup against Arizona, who, they can get some turnovers there. And I think the Seahawks have a pretty decent defense as well. Just they can get some sacks and things like that. So, but definitely if the Browns are out there, pick them up.
And then I will go back to the one that you mentioned last week, the Raiders, who have been a top 12 defense the last 2 weeks and now get the Justin Fields-less Bears. So that's a juicy matchup on top of juicy matchup. It's only a 1 week deal because you got Detroit after that. Yeah. But for 1 week and 1 week only, wow, what a matchup to play the Raiders after they've had 2 back-to-back weeks of looking pretty solid and competent. But even then, they've got Detroit in week 8, which you wouldn't play them for that. But then they've got the Giants and the Jets in weeks 9 and 10. So 3 of the next 4 matchups are fairly decent, and then you can cut them before they play Miami and Kansas City and going into their bye. But if you're looking for a streaming option for a little bit longer than just a week, the Raiders, I think, are a pretty interesting one.
Yeah. It's basically Max Crosby, and, he's the one-man wrecking ball. So
yeah, it's working.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, there you go. Any final parting thoughts for the people, Mike?
No, just hopefully your matchups, if they haven't been determined, and hopefully they get determined with this game, and hopefully the Chargers can pull it out.
Yeah. All right. Well, Neil will be back with Guillotine tomorrow. If you've got start-sit questions for the week with all the injuries and the buys and everything, the boys will be back on Thursday with Roster the People. But until then, keep up the nonsense.